Welcome back to Tell Your Story Alaska. Now today is Monday, and normally I record village stories, but today I have some people visiting me this week. Some young gals from California who were camp counselors at Cochrane Hills Bible Camp for the last several years. I think each of you have been here several times, right? Right. So we decided to do a unique episode and interview them to talk about what it's like to be a camp counselor at Cochrane Hills. Now, Cochrane Hills Bible Camp, for those that may not know, it is a Bible camp located in a remote location between the villages of Tanana and Ruby on the Yukon River, which is in central Alaska. In fact, if you take a map of Alaska and you just blindly poke your finger in the middle, that's where the camp is. Now, every year, the camp offers camp experiences for kids from elementary to high schoolers from the surrounding villages in central Alaska. And volunteers come every summer. Some are from the lower 48. Some are from local churches in Alaska, but volunteers come as counselors, maintenance crew, activity coordinators, and a lot of other roles to make the camp happen. Now, today, 3 of these volunteers who have been going for several years are here with me, and we're going to talk about what it's like to be a camp counselor at a remote Bible camp in remote Alaska. So with me is Rosie from California, and she is interested in biblical counseling. She's pursuing education in that. Angela is interested in becoming a school teacher, and she's kind of got her eyes set on Alaska. Audrey is pursuing midwifery, and we were joking about midwifery and husbandry. And husbandry is like cows, and midwifery is babies, and what's up with that? But all 3 of them are considering calling Alaska home one day, partly because of their experience volunteering at this camp. So today I invited them on. We're just going to talk about what it's like to be a camp counselor and how it has formed in your life. So ladies, thank you for coming on Tell Your Story Alaska.
Yeah, of course.
So let's start with a very brief, who are you kind of thing. Let's start with you, Rosie. Tell us where you're from, your background, and how did you end up coming to Cochrane Hills Bible Camp?
Yeah, I was born and raised in California and have been attending the same church my entire life. And every summer they send out short-term missions teams. And one of the summers, Cochrane Hills was the trip to go on. And I was too young, but a couple of my siblings went. And they just fell in love with it. And so I knew that once I hit the age I could go, I was going to go. And yeah, the first time I went, I was 14, and I'm 21 now, and I've been coming ever since. So
wow,
yeah.
It's almost like a family dynasty.
It is. It's sweet. It's a fun thing to share with all my siblings.
It does seem like it's kind of sticking for you.
Yes, for sure.
This might be a permanent situation.
Absolutely.
In your future.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Angela, how about you?
Yeah, so I was also born and super thankful to have been born and raised in a Christian home. I attended a Slavic Baptist church most of my life. And then, after not growing, I switched over to the church that Rosie goes to now. And the Lord had just grown me so much in that. And my older brother and cousin had also gone to Cochrane Hills for a couple years. And then I went my first time last year. Or 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2 years ago. And I just fell in love with it. And then the next year I was like, you know what? I'm going in for a month and I don't know what the Lord's going to do, but I'm ready. And I'm so excited. So.
And cool fact about you, you are fluent in Russian.
Yeah.
Yep. And Alaska used to be Russia.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm back here. I'm back home. Yeah. It's my time to shine.
Cool. How about you, Audrey?
I kind of was all over the States when I was younger, but moved to California when I was about 6, and then I became a believer at 15. I started going to youth group at the church that does the missions trips, and so then I went up, I think, first in 2023, and it was such an amazing experience. I decided to go back the following year, which was this past year, and hopefully again this coming year. So.
And you actually got baptized last summer in the Yukon River.
Yes, at camp.
By you.
By Billy, actually, yeah. And Erica, yeah. So it was really cool.
And being baptized in a huge Alaskan remote river is the coolest.
That was very neat. Yeah.
So sad to see.
It was amazing.
Great. So tell us about getting there. Let's talk about getting to camp. So I know that you fly the airlines into Fairbanks. Then you stay at this missionary housing place by some friends of mine. And then you have to take a bus to Nenana. And then you fly like a bush plane out to the camp.
Yeah.
Tell me about just the getting there experience. Like, were you guys scared of getting in the bush plane like a handful of people are, but was that your experience?
Yeah, I think the first time I went, being so young too, I was freaking out. And getting motion sickness in the past definitely didn't build my confidence at all. But I didn't get sick at all, really, which is great. And I think Angela would say the same.
Yeah, I get really bad motion sickness on just commercial and big airplanes. Yeah, and so that whole trip, like I was asking for prayer just for like, please, 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 like let this be okay. And then getting on the bush plane, I was terrified. I was like, this is it. Like the small plane is gonna be where I have my downfall. Like I'm gonna get so sick. But yeah, like halfway through the flight, I felt great, and my head was out the window the whole time. And you were actually my first pilot.
Oh, cool.
And so it was just, yeah, it was an amazing flight, and I was. Yeah, the travel is definitely long and hard, but once you get to camp, it's like, oh, I remember why I'm here. And you kind of like, it kicks in of like, you get this burst of energy. But I don't know, what about you, Audrey?
I think out of all the flights, the bush plane is definitely the most fun. I wasn't really nervous because I don't tend to get motion sickness. And it's just how much you can see compared to a commercial plane is just incredible.
Yeah.
Like it's really a unique experience.
Ironically, you're like lower to the ground.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can see less, but you can see more
See
detail.
more.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
beautiful.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
All right. So let's talk about some of the things at camp. Like one of the more prominent things, and this is just more fun talk, but like talk about the mosquitoes. Because I know like people always, like when new people come, they always ask me about bears. Am I going to see bears? Am I going to see a moose?
Yeah.
But really the most prominent creature is
Yeah, mosquitoes.
the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
What's the mosquito? What's up with them?
Well,
I can share a quick, just kind of funny story. I remember with some of my friends, we were just packing all our stuff, and we got like this natural like mosquito spray, trying to be totally, I don't know, just because it's bad or whatever. Yeah,
It doesn't work.
And exactly, yeah. By the end of the week, we were all begging for 100% DEET and like spraying it all over our faces and like where we shouldn't be, but we just needed it.
Yeah.
So it was,
Yes.
they're definitely welcoming. They're the first ones to meet you on the ground when you get off the bush plane in KHBC.
And the last one's to say goodbye.
Oh,
Yep.
absolutely. They stay with you on the plane.
Yeah. You take some home with you with the little plane.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely like the first couple days, if it's your very first time going, it's hard to get used to. And it's like, I don't know how I'll do this. But I think once like camp kicks in into full gear and you're like, you know what? I'm here for the campers. I'm here to serve the Lord. I'm here to have a good time. And I'm here to pour the gospel into these kids. And it's like, it honestly, like you kind of forget about it. Like you notice they're still there, but like it becomes almost the least of your worries. It's like, oh, another mosquito slap. And it's like, all right.
There's also that like after a while, our bodies respond to bugs, and we have a natural resistance once your body adjusts.
Yeah.
And you kind of get used to that too.
Yeah.
yeah. It becomes kind of a thing on the side.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah. What I tell people is because I get bitten pretty bad. And so whenever I come home, everybody is very alarmed by what I look like. I look like I have leprosy. But when I tell people, like what Angela was saying, it becomes such a secondary thing because what we're there to do is so important. And because I think it really is just the Lord's grace to us in allowing us to kind of forget about them for a little bit. And hopefully you're so focused on the kids, so focused on what we're there to do that the bugs are just, they're just secondary, and everybody's kind of in it together. So it almost becomes this bonding experience of like, we're all dealing with the mosquitoes. Our cabins might be different, but we're all dealing with the mosquitoes. And it kind of builds camaraderie a little bit of just, we're all in it together. We're all slapping each other's legs and arms when we see a bug. And it kind of becomes.
I love that principle of you're all in it together, but you're also there for a bigger purpose. And that is why you endure it. Like if you were just stuck out there because of some accident, it would be like, this is so miserable. But because you're there for a higher purpose, you're like, let's do this.
Totally.
You know? So it does something to us we endure more when we're there for something bigger.
Totally.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there are definitely like areas where it's worse and where it's better.
Yeah.
Like, so if you stay away from like the clearings and like where there's a ton of grass, then it's like you'll be fine. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal.
Yeah. Go take
Yeah.
a shower if you really need a break.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge proponent of bug nets. I
Yes.
hate DEET. I'm like anti-DEET.
Yes.
It ruins your plane.
It does. It's a plane stank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
DEET. Yeah, so if you're gonna come to camp, don't bring DEET. That's
Yeah.
Bring bug nets
Yeah.
and long sleeve shirts and all that.
Doesn't Joey, the director of KHBC, have a shirt that's like, I want to be so full of Jesus that the mosquitoes, when they bite me, they fly away singing, there's power in the blood. I think every time he wears it, it cracks me up.
Really good.
He brings it
Yeah.
every year.
That's good bringing the faith in a cultural context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So on that topic of like, I'm gonna like say like a sentence and tell me what your reaction is. This is almost
Okay.
like like a counselor of like, what do you see in this blob? So,
Okay.
but I'm gonna say a sentence. The sentence is, I came to serve and help others to hear the gospel, but it was I who really changed.
Mm.
What do you think about that statement?
Yeah, that definitely resonates a lot. I think it's easy to go into the trip with a sense of pride in knowing, like, I'm the one who's changing these kids' lives. I'm going to do all of these powerful things.
Mhm.
And then you go and you're just absolutely humbled and just brought to your knees, honestly, in such a unique way because you're sleep deprived and you're just irritable. Your sin is on display. And you just see your weakness so clearly on display. And you really have to cling to Christ and just cling to his word. And yeah, you walk away. Something that I take away every year, I learn the same lesson, I feel like every year, which is I am so dependent on the Lord.
Yeah.
And when we're at home, when we're in California, it's easy to have some sense of like, I'm the one sustaining my life. I'm the one who's choosing what to do. I'm the one that wakes myself up in the morning. And then you go to camp and it's like, I physically cannot get out of bed without the Lord's strength.
Mm.
And that principle, being able to take that home and apply it to my daily life has been so cool. Just, yeah, now I feel like I'm just a lot more conscious of the fact that in everything, I am dependent on the Lord. And that's a lesson that he continually teaches me every time I go to camp. And yeah, I get excited now going to camp because I know that I'm going to learn more about my sin and more about how much I need Christ and the gospel. Like, I am just as in need of the gospel as these kids were preaching to, and going every year reminds me of that.
So what
again.
about that is so life-giving? Like becoming more aware of your own sin does not sound fun to me. Or like not sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like trying to handle kids who are really difficult.
Yeah.
But you come back and like, so why is this experience so life-giving that you're like three of you are now like, I kind of want to move to Alaska now. I want to go do something really hard. Like, why is that so life-giving?
I think becoming aware of your sin just makes you appreciate the gospel so much more. Christ and what he did becomes so much greater when we understand the depth of our sin and the depth of our need for him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to take it for granted or to minimize what Christ did. And when we don't see our sin for what it is, it's like, well, okay, it's nice that he died for us, but did I really need it? And then you see your sin and it's like, wow, I am so dependent on what Christ did on the cross. Like, everything in my life should be lived in light of the fact that my sin has been paid for. My sin is infinite, and yet Christ's forgiveness covers it. And
I've been talking about this, and I teach a little Sunday school class. We've been talking about this, that when we serve, and I'm hearing this in your voice, when we serve, it is not out of some kind of a religious obligation, but rather it's an outflowing of the joy that
Yeah.
in us. And when you go to a place like camp, in those physical, you're sleep deprived. I don't think you're ever really hungry. The food there is
great.
Yeah.
It's a great plus
Yeah.
of being there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't really lose weight, but you lose sleep. And you might lose a little bit of your sanity.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But there's that verse that's, I think it's in Psalm 34, I think it's verse 10, where it says, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted, and he draws near to the crushed in spirit.
Yeah.
And there's a part of us that finds life in being crushed and broken in certain ways. And camp is, I don't know how else to put it, maybe a sort of a microcosm. It's 1 week of your life, or in your case, you ladies have gone for several weeks where you endure that for a short time. Then you go back to the comforts of California life and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's something about you are more alive in those hardships than in all of the comforts of life you normally have.
Yep.
And it's like you want more.
Totally. Yeah. A verse that comes to mind really fast, and I'll be done, is 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10, which says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Like, that's just camp. In 2 verses, that is camp. My weakness, my weakness points to Christ's strength, and that's all I can ask for.
Yeah, I think, like, the longer you're there, the more comfortable you become, and like, it's so humbling, and honestly, so like, it's hard to see your sin being revealed and for others to see your sin too. But I think, me and Rosie were even talking about it this last year, but we thought of this as almost like a theme verse, but it's Philippians chapter 2, verse 17. "Even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all." And I think, like, overall, just, looking at it, and it's like what we're pouring out right now is like, it's honestly, it's nothing of ourselves, but it's all like what the Lord has provided for us to be able to pour out onto these kids and like display the testimony of Christ and like what he's done in our lives and like what he's done for it, like individually, each of these kids. And I think, like, even coming to these trips, like, we do months of like preparation, and you go into it like, okay, like, I have this all poured into me now, and I'm going to go and like release everything for these kids, and then I like leave back home, and I start thinking, like, even on the trip, I'm like, I came back home with like almost the exact same amount that I thought I would be giving out. Like, I learned so much on this trip about myself. I learned so much about the kids there. I learned about, the peers that I'm coming with. And it's like, you come back home with these lessons that I'm like, you know what? Like, this was eye-opening. And there's just lessons that you start to apply in your own daily life. Like Rosie was saying, and it's so many things to experience at once, but it's so good. And the way God has grown me has been so sweet, I think. Yeah.
Something that really stood out to me the first year I went was just at home, you kind of see sometimes that your time in the Word is like a chore, but we would get up every morning, or at least a good chunk of us would, and study our Bible and be in the Word, and just you feel like the need for that while you're there. And it's a really cool experience because I had never felt that before, of just like, well, I have to like fill myself up at the beginning of the day in order to have anything to give over to these kids, because it's kind of going off what Angela was saying. You don't have it in yourself. It's given to you by God. And so just like experience that in real life is really a life-changing experience. And you take that home with you too. Just I can really relate to what Rosie was saying about like pride, and just when you get there, you realize how sinful you are, because your focus can be on the wrong thing. And until you're thrown into that situation, you don't know how you're going to react and what you're going to be thinking about. And so having to shift your focus onto what really matters, like serving the kids, spending time with them. And it's just really, powerful.
I'm really interested. It's so interesting the way you ladies are putting it. And it's neat. You're like, I go there and I realize how sinful I am. But somehow that is so life-giving. It's kind of like seeing the reality of your heart rather than satiating it with, social media that tells you what you want to hear. When you get away and you face hardships, your heart, your true heart comes out. There's no pretending. And you want more of that because it's not synthetic. It's real. It's like we all crave real. When you get it out there.
Totally. I mean, everything is stripped away pretty much. Like, no service. You can't be on your phone. You can't distract your mind with your phone or whatever. Like, you're just there with your own thoughts in real time, and you're having to deal with any thoughts that are coming to your mind. Like, you can't just distract with shows or social media or anything. Like, all these things that the Lord is putting on your heart and on your mind, you really have to deal with it right then and there, because there's nowhere else to go,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a cool thing to,
They say like if you know, if you want to know what a fruit is, you squeeze it, and
Mhm.
whatever comes out, that's what fruit it is.
Yep.
Yeah, orange juice comes out of oranges, but
Yeah.
if you get squeezed, whatever comes out, it's what's in you.
totally.
Yep.
You know, so
Absolutely.
if you're an embittered person because you've been
Mhm.
wounded or you have anxieties about the future, when you're squeezed, those are coming out,
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and you get to see them.
You get
Yeah.
squeezed at camp.
Yep. You get squeezed quite a bit.
Right. And
Yeah.
yet we go back for more squeezing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the campers. That's what I want to hear about
Mhm.
because I'm and I say this intentionally, I'm just the pilot. We said this at a meeting at our church talking about camp coming up, that my job is pretty easy. I just fly the plane, but the camp counselors have the hardest job. You're with the campers all the time.
Mhm.
Some of them are great and awesome, and some are really, really difficult. So let's start with talking about like just to get it going, like bedtime. Like I hear these stories from the counselor. We were up till 3 a.m.
Mhm.
playing tic-tac-toe. I don't even know what you guys do. But it's like, and you're just so sleep deprived and desperate. And I like slept all night. So tell me about like, just to get us going about campers, like tell us about
Mhm.
bedtime.
Mm.
They will want to stay up late
Yeah.
because this is like their fun thing. It's their camp for the year, you know, and they want to have as much fun as possible, I think. And it's hard because you have to get up earlier, but it's worth it, I think,
Mhm.
to play games with them late at night, to spend that time with them. I think that was one of the biggest things I learned like throughout the week was any time you can spend with the campers is like so valuable.
Mhm.
Because you'll look back and be like, man, I wish I spent more time with them. It didn't just go take that nap or sit in the cabin. Obviously there's a limit because you do have to sleep at some point, but
Yeah.
it's really worth it even when you're tired to just
Mhm.
play the games with them and they
And it
come
probably is those late nights is when you kind of bond with them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's those bonds you're
Mhm.
pursuing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
It happens in those unique
It
times.
does,
Maybe not even in the program time.
Yeah.
But it's in
Yeah.
those organic times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it communicates to them that they're worth being tired for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, it would be very easy to tell them all to just be quiet. So that we can sleep.
Yeah.
But that communicates to them, I don't really want to spend time with you
Sleep
when
is
it's
more valuable
inconvenient to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I'll spend time with you during the day when I'm supposed to.
Right.
But at night,
Yeah.
I need my sleep.
Mhm.
But staying up with them late is just another way that we can communicate our love to them. And
Yeah.
yeah, one of my favorite things that campers have ever done, I think I was 15 at the time, and I woke up at 2 or 3 a.m. to all of them had taken their mattresses out of their beds and had stacked them on the floor. But then there was a kid in between each mattress. So it was like this
Sandwich.
7-decker mattress bus with a child in between each mattress. And they were just hanging out like that. And I was like, all right, I'm
They were
gonna
just
let them
laying
get it.
there, just laying
Yeah.
there. Like,
They were all
Yeah.
awake. They were all
Yeah.
like whispering.
I mean, the
And
poor kid on the bottom.
I know. I know. It's a wonder that they all survived
Yeah.
because it looks like a tight
Yeah.
fit. But
Yeah.
that was one of the funniest things. It was like, oh, all right.
Let's talk about like those bonds. Like, I know the bonds don't happen immediately,
Mhm.
and it doesn't happen with all of them.
Mhm.
So, what does it look like when you get a bond with a kid? How long does it usually take, and how does that usually happen?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think first coming in, like we're told, like you're gonna have to make an effort. Like you're gonna have to reach out to the kids because they're not gonna open up to you. Like it's very rare they do like right away. But I think from the moment that they come to camp, you have to start making an effort and really just loving on them because like a lot of us coming to camp like have no idea like what degree these kids have, what they've gone through. And so I think, from the first couple of days, you kind of just have to be content with your most of your interaction being like, during activities or game times or discussion groups where you're kind of trying to pry an answer out of them. But I think after the first couple of days, like when you start to become vulnerable, like that's one of the biggest things I think is just being vulnerable and like accepting that you're going to have to open up a side of yourself if you want them to start being vulnerable and opening up too. And so I think for me in our group, it was like I think after maybe the third or fourth day, sometimes like they start to open up about things they're struggling with. And like when we share our testimonies and we start to open up, then they're kind of like, oh, like she's gone through something similar, or she's being vulnerable. So I think, they start to open up a side of themselves that is just really sweet to see. And like, it opens up another set of conversations that, you can have, and like another way to be able to preach the gospel to them, about like what they're going through, what they've gone through. And so, yeah, it's a sweet bond though, once you're able to connect with them. And it's some of the hardest, things to like get to know them and to get them to open up. But at the end of the week or end of the month or however long you stay, like that's some of the hardest goodbyes, because you know so much about this person. They know so much about you.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen you at your worst. You might have seen them, at some of their worst. And so, yeah, I don't know. What about you? What do you guys think?
Sometimes they don't open up, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I've had past years where I feel like I never could break through to them, and that was really difficult. And I think it broke my ego a little bit, because in my head I'm like, I can open up anybody. Like, just give me enough time and they'll open up to me, and they never did. And yeah, there was like this battle in my head of like, what am I doing wrong? I'm not good enough for this. I can't break through to them. And that was just another way that the Lord had to humble me, I think, and show me like, this is not, their salvation is not dependent on me. I cannot save them. I cannot force them to be open with me. I am only called, and this is something Angela and I like kept repeating to ourselves over and over last year, is that we are not called to save them. We're just called to be faithful.
Yeah.
And that is what I had to repeat to myself over and over, is like, I can't force anything from them. I just need to be faithful and consistent and view every opportunity as a chance to share Christ with them. What they do with that, I have no control over, but that doesn't mean that I should just stop. Like, after a couple days, if there's no movement on their side, that doesn't mean that we could go, well, I guess I'll try again next year.
Yeah.
I don't have to keep going with this. It's like, no, you're there to be faithful. You're there to be consistent. What they're going to do with that is what they're going to do with that. And we shouldn't change based off of the response we're getting from them. You just need to be faithful.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I think that demonstrates wisdom beyond your years. I think for one thing, it does demonstrate that you have good theology of salvation. It is not dependent on how persuasive you are. It is dependent on the work of the Holy Spirit in these kids. But it also reveals, you talked about how you see your own sin when you can't crack a kid, so to speak, and you felt humbled. You're like, oh, I failed. You actually didn't fail, but you were idolizing results. And that is an unhealthy thing to idolize in ministry. But what you do is you, like you said, you're faithful. I'm just going to continue loving. And if I never get to know this kid by the end of the week, then you say, that's okay. You have to say, that's okay. We can serve free of those idolizations. And it's actually more pleasurable to serve that way.
I had one girl who was pretty silent all week, pretty tough. It was honestly one of the hardest weeks of my life. Just because it was a tough situation. And on the last day, as she was leaving, she threw me this piece of paper, and on it said, I love you. And that was just the sweetest thing, because all week I thought she hated me. I thought that, she literally told me to my face that she wished she had a different counselor. So it was just tough. It was a hard week. And then to get that note, I still have it. I carry it in a bag that's back home. And I still have that note. And it's just a simple I love you. But yeah, you don't know the impact you're having on the kids. And they might not show you the impact you're having on them. But you just got to keep going. And that note, it changed the way that I think I counseled the following year. Because I think in the back of my head, I was like, I don't know how the Lord is using this. I don't know the impact I'm having. I might never know, and I don't need to know. I don't need to satisfy this urge to know the impact I'm making. That's not for me to know. I just need to keep going and keep loving the Lord, and through that, keep being fueled by His strength. And maybe God is going to save this girl down the line. That's my prayer. That's what I still pray. And I might not ever know if that happens in my lifetime, but the fact that I was there to plant that seed, that's what I'm called to do. I'm just called to plant the seeds.
It sounds like biblical counseling is up your alley.
For sure.
All right, let me read another statement. You tell me your thoughts on it. challenging behavior, speaking of the behavior of campers, challenging behavior likely points to challenging stuff in the kid's life. It's not just a bad kid, but a broken kid.
I'm interested to hear what Audrey has to say about this, because she's had, I feel like, some really good conversations with some girls who have gone through quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy when like a child is either being rude to you or just like not opening up, like you were saying, or does something that's, you know, not okay, right? And it's easy to just all of a sudden take it personally or be like, what is wrong with this person? You know, because that's us going, oh, you know, probably cut this part. I just think that I don't know what to say. I know what I'm thinking.
You
about.
lost your train of
I
thought.
totally.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No,
You're good.
I don't mind. Just someone else
You're
can
good.
talk, and I will think.
We'll come back to you.
Come back to me. Yeah.
Yeah, just think about even your own life stories.
Yeah.
Each of you, and I do too, have brokenness in our lives. And our brokenness affects our behavior.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to label a kid as bad. Oh, that's a bad kid. But behind that bad behavior is some kind of a brokenness. And I think that it changes our perspective from like, ick, that kid's annoying, to like, that kid needs more love.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I want to know what's behind that. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't, and that's okay. But it does change your perspective from ick, a bad kid, to a broken kid. that needs love.
Yeah. I think, just the more. I also lost my train of thought. Oh, where was I going?
I think something that I try to remind myself a lot is their bad behavior a lot of times is just a cry for help. And it's a cry for the attention that they're not getting at home. And it is super easy to kind of, especially when you're sleep deprived, to be super annoyed. And there are definitely moments when I gave into that temptation and was super annoyed. But the goal is to see these kids as they're begging you for your love and for your attention. They might not say it that way. It might not come across that way, but a lot of times they're testing you. They're seeing, okay, if I push this many buttons, will they flip a switch and decide that they don't actually want to love me? Because I think a lot of times, even in our lives in California, like, love from other people is so often conditional. And I think they're trying to test that boundary of like, at what point are you going to decide, I don't want to love you anymore? And it's our job. We're not loving them from our own strength. We're loving them from the love that God has. And his love is unconditional. Like, he loved us while we were still sinners. He died for us while we were still sinners and, dead in our trespasses and sins. And that's the same love that I have now through the Holy Spirit that I get to give them. And so I think the whole week is just, channeling not your own love, because it will be conditional. It will fail. You will get to a point where you don't want to deal with them anymore. But when it's being fueled by Christ's love, you can give them that unconditional affection that they're asking you for, they're seeking from you. And it's super hard.
They're also acting in self-preservation ways. So like, they want to know if someone's going to genuinely love them by annoying them. So like, they act out in certain ways, and it is like a test, because if I open myself up to this person and then they hurt me, and they're afraid of that, and reasonably so, because that's probably happened before. It's probably happened to all of us at some level. And so if you get like the annoying kid, a lot of it is they're testing you to see if you're genuinely gonna love back. And so I think it's a action of self-preservation from hurt, by extending some hurt to see if the love is unconditional or if it's conditional. Like, what do you want from me, really? Are you here for a mission trip? Are you here to like change me? Or do you generally care about me? And annoying you is testing back. And that's, I think, is one of the big challenges of being a camp counselor, because you're like torn up in your mind, like, why is this kid? But they're acting out of self-preservation, not wanting to be hurt. They're protecting their hearts. And that's one of the challenges.
There was a moment, I can't remember if it was this year or last year, or the first year I think I went, where our campers asked my co-counselor and I, like, how much are you guys getting paid to be here? And we looked at each other and we were like, are you guys serious? Like, we paid to be here. And I think it even opened up another like conversation where we could just say, like, we genuinely want to be here. We want to love on you guys. We want to share this amazing good news with you guys. And like, we paid to be here. And I think that kind of like, they were all silent for a little bit and they were kind of like deep in thought. And I think, yeah, they really, it, you know, took an effect of some sort. But I think after that conversation, they were able to like, they were just more genuine and like almost more just listening more to what we had to say. And they were like, wow, like they paid to be here. They want to be here. They want to be here with us. And so I think that was just really sweet to also talk about and just to have them realize. And
I think that makes me think of just like how they're trying to see if they can trust you, because it is kind of probably strange for them to have these people coming in and maybe not knowing your motives of like, yeah, maybe they guess this is our job or this is, you know, like, and just to show that you care and you're not just looking for those results that we were talking about, because that is, again, going in, you're like, I want to see the fruit of my work, but you're not guaranteed that, you know, and then just being at peace with that can change the way you serve the kids, change the way you spend time with them, because, and then it means a lot to them for them to see, yeah, you love me even when I do say this or do this, and you love me even when I'm pushing you away, and you're not just trying to get an answer from me. You want to spend time with me and you want to, you know, just like be with me and care for me. And so it is really cool. It takes time, but it's really cool towards the end of the week when you're actually having these really good conversations with the kids and it doesn't feel forced and it doesn't feel pushed. And they're not all of them, of course, but they're coming to you and bringing things to you, you know, but it takes that trust and it takes that time. And it's not going to be the kind of thing where you come in and you're like, tell me your life story, tell me, you know, all these things. Like, it can't be that way. And so just like the patience to, kind of got off on a rabbit trail there, but, you know, just like how what you were saying about them pushing you away and like annoying you on purpose, I think it is to see, can I trust you? Can I like tell you things? And also, why are you here? You know, do you truly care for me as a person? So.
And I feel like just stemming off the topic of even like the kids acting up, I think the more that you open up and like the more that the kids open up to you and are vulnerable, the more that you're able to have an understanding and kind of like I don't know what the word, like the right word for it is, but like just an understanding of why like they act up as they act up. Like maybe specifically the kid that opened up to you, you're kind of like, wow, I can see why you acted these ways. Like Rosie was saying, it was really just a cry for like help or a cry for the love that they don't get at home. And like even then, you know, going into like the rest of camp, it's like, you know what, looking at other campers that might be like acting up or like asking for attention, it's like, I really wonder like what the deeper meaning behind it is. And like, you just have a different sense of compassion of like, wow, like I have no idea that the kind of things that they go through, and I can't even imagine, but it must be so hard. And you just feel this whole different sense of compassion. Like I've only gone for 2 years, and this will be my third. And I think like I already have started to develop a sense of like, you can't look at a kid and say like, wow, that's a bad kid. It's like, I almost, you know, I have to catch myself sometimes, but then I start to think back to like, okay, what might have this camper gone through that is causing them to be like this? Or what are they currently going through? Which I know Rosie has gone, you've gone like 5 or 6 years.
This will be my 5th.
Your 5th year, yeah. And I'm sure like you have a different sense, having gone so long and hearing what different campers have gone through and are going through. I'm sure like you have a whole different sense of compassion having gone longer in terms of like, just like it's not a bad kid. It's not somebody who's like, you know, it's just somebody who's troubled and who just needs the gospel as much as we do. Yeah.
I think, they need the gospel is the most important thing. I can try and fix their circumstances and all these things, but ultimately the only thing that they need is the gospel. They could live in a perfect circumstance, you know, and they're still lost. The gospel is the highest thing that we can give them. And it's easy to, like, your heart breaks for them, you know, when you get to know them, they become so dear to you. When you know what they're going through or just different things in their life, your heart breaks. And I have to catch myself and remind myself, they need the gospel. As much as their physical circumstances are challenging, their eternal state needs to be more important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I need to give them the gospel, and I have to constantly go back to that, is where they are spiritually matters more than where they are circumstantially or physically.
Mm-hmm.
Christ is what they need. They don't need a better family situation. They don't need a better living situation.
Mm-hmm.
They need Christ.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, last tidbit to add on, but like me and Rosie had a moment this last year that we went for a month, and one of the camps, like we really had one of our campers, it was like one of the ones that we wasn't sure was going to stay for discipleship camp, but ended up staying, and that was the week that she had opened up, and we were able to just sit with her, and she just like really, really opened up, and we sat for like 30 minutes or something, even maybe more, and she just opened up and talked about life back home. And it's so hard to hear from the other point of view where you're like, I can't do anything about this to fix it right now, or to fix it for you, to make your pain go away, to help it be better. And I think as we sat there, the only thing we could do is just preach the gospel. In every like every time that we talked, I feel like we would just try to share the gospel, try to share Christ's love, try to share this and that. Because it's easy to be like, just pray about it. Oh, like this and this. But there's another sense of like, I can't help you, and that breaks my heart. But what I can do is share the gospel, and that is like the best thing that you could have right now, and the only thing that will help.
Yeah. There's no
So-
hope outside of the gospel.
Absolutely.
I think there's bouncing off what you said. There's wisdom in this thought of Job and his suffering. The best things his friends did was sit quietly with him for 7 days.
Yeah.
As soon as they opened their mouths, it became a problem. And I think that applies to the camp, because some of these kids do come from horrific home situations, and you can't do anything about it. Me as the pilot, I fly these kids back home, and sometimes, I'm always trying to be careful not to judge, but you get an intuition that they're going home to something hellish. And so, and I'm powerless to do anything about it. And so what we do have to offer is the gospel, which not only like offers eternal life and that kind of thing, but the gospel transforms us now. We call it sanctification, and it's it gives you capacity and strength to get through current hellish circumstances, even for young people, and that is what we can offer. And so that's what we do offer.
Yeah.
Because we do have to take them home, or that would be kidnapping.
Can I ask you a question, Billy?
Sure.
So, like, what are you feeling typically, since you're usually the last person that sees the kids before you drop them off in the villages? And like you were saying, like sending them back to what you feel like could be hellish. Like, how does that feel like for you? Or like, how are you able to, I don't know how you're able to like fly back to camp after that. And it's like knowing what you have to send them back to, or like having an intuition. Like, how is that kind of for you? Or like,
I think there's a little bit of hardening of the heart, knowing, you just have to.
Yeah.
I have to go home.
Yeah.
And so when you get that sixth sense, or whatever you want to call it, you're like a lot of kids cry in the plane on the way home. Not all. Some kids have really good home lives. Like, I don't want to discount.
Yeah. Totally.
There's a lot of great parents out there, but a lot of them don't. And when you sense it, I just have to kind of harden my heart a little bit and say goodbye.
Wow.
And that's when you have to, it's just in the Lord's hands. Like, we can't control their circumstances in their life, but we know the one who is controlling their circumstances in their life, and we know that he's a good God. We know that he's sovereign, and it's in those moments that we really have to ground ourselves in scripture and in truth, and knowing like God is good, and he's sovereign, and he is in control, and he is the one who is ordaining all of these things, and he is the one who's caring for every single person that he's ever created. Like, he knows how many hairs you have on your head. He clothes the lilies. How much more will he care for us, right? And it's so hard, and it's a lot easier said than done, but that's when we have to be so grounded in truth, and just knowing who our amazing God is, and knowing who we are, and knowing we have no power, but we have the one who has all the power, and we get to pray to him. We get to rely on him. We know that he knows their circumstances better than we ever will. He knows what they go through.
We're limited in our reach.
Exactly.
We
But
accept that.
because God is so great, we know. We know our creator, and we know that he's caring for them way better than we could ever care for him for them in our in our sinfulness, the love that we have doesn't even compare to what God has. And
and I'll say this, one thing I get to see that as a pilot that no one else gets to really see is when sometimes parents or grandma and grandpa or uncle or whatever will pick up the kid,
Mhm.
and the uncle will be like, I went to that camp when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It changed my life.
Wow.
Wow.
I
So
love
cool.
camp.
Wow.
So every now and then I get comments like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really encouraging because while there's still darkness out there,
Mhm.
the camp has in these communities created light, like little light bulbs,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's in the people that make comments like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there are beautiful Native families out there
Yeah.
that love their kids very, very well. And many of them did go to camp, and that
Mhm.
had an impact on their
Mhm.
life. So it is encouraging for me to hear the comments like that, thinking about the ongoing of this camp
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
like a light in the,
Mhm.
in the midst of dark things. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder because I feel like it's so easy, even just at camp, to feel overwhelmed by like the brokenness of hearing all these stories but just remembering we have the hope of Christ,
Mhm.
and the hope of Christ is enough in these villages as well, even though it's so broken there, like it's enough, and it's there, and they have that, if a family member comes or a kid comes home and talks to their parents or you just never know what's gonna happen or what's going on, what we don't see. And I do think that can be encouraging.
yeah,
Like you were saying, just,
Mhm.
hearing those comments, that's really cool.
they're the best part of my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so let's one more question. Tell us about how your camp experience is making you think about your future. Connect your camp time to your future.
Yeah.
Man. that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Intentionally so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am a homebody. I love being at home. I love my family. And so leaving that was never on the table for me until this past summer, spending a month at camp. It was your wife, Erica, threw it out to me like the first week of camp. She was like, well, would you ever consider like making this a permanent move? Would you ever just live here?
Mm-hmm.
And initially I was like, absolutely not. There's no way I would ever do that. But it just planted this little seed in my head. And then for the rest of the month as I was there, the seed just started growing and growing. And I was like, you know what? That's actually something that I really want to pray about and consider and not just push aside.
Like maybe this is worth sacrificing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So obviously no like big life decisions have been made yet. But it's been 8 months now since I was at camp, and the seed is still there. The seed is still growing. And there's still many prayers being made about that. And even at home now, it's changed my perspective on ministry. It's changed the way that I pour into the people back home, and I'm on youth staff at my local church. And so I'm constantly around kids that are the same age as the kids we serve at camp. And the way that I aim to love them and to pour into them has changed because of camp. And just, the gospel changes everything. And when you serve and you preach the gospel, you change and your heart changes, and it changes the way you see ministry, the way you see other people, the way you are able to love people and point them to Christ. And so regardless of what happens in my future, whether I stay in California, move to Alaska, move somewhere else, wherever the Lord decides to place me, my whole view of ministry has changed. And that's something that will last for the rest of my life, is the way that I pour into people has been changed because of Cochrane Hills. And wherever the Lord puts me, I know that a little bit of my ministry view and perspective, it'll always be a little reminder of Cochrane Hills and just what God has done in my own heart that allows me to.
Even if you go to Timbuktu.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's something that I've been thinking about, not specifically Timbuktu. That one hasn't popped up yet, but even in my own head, I've just become more willing, I think, to go where the Lord leads me. I was, for the first 20 years of my life, like, I'm never leaving my mom. Like, I'm always going to live within 10 minutes of my mom. and maybe I'll convince her to just come with me wherever I go. But I think the Lord has allowed me to be a lot more willing to just go wherever he leads me without that fear of not being in my comfort zone.
How about you, Angela?
I think very similar kind of to how the seed sprouted with Rosie. I think it was either the first, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but it was either the end of the first week of camp or the beginning of the second week of discipleship week. And we were just sitting in the main room and we were watching this this video, I think that Joey had made, basically, or not Joey, but somebody had made about like the history of Cochrane Hills. And okay, yeah, so the history of Cochrane Hills and kind of to where it has now. And I think just watching this, like I got this overwhelming sense of like God's faithfulness and how faithful he has been from the beginning to where he has brought the camp now, and to how much has changed and how much it has grown and how much how much it truly is like the Lord's camp. Like that's what Roger keeps saying. And like towards the end of the video, I just was like so overwhelmed, and I like put my head down and I like silently started crying like right on the chair. And I think Rosie was sitting next to me, and I I just looked up at some point because we started rearranging the room to play games or something. It's not the time. And I like put my head up, and like Rosie, I think it was you, was there. And I was like, Rosie, like I just got this overwhelming sense of like, what would it look like for my life if I were to just pick everything up right now and like just move to Alaska and become a missionary and just serve the kids, and like either in the villages or wherever the Lord has me, but like in Alaska. And I just like, yeah, we stood there and we just hugged for like 5 minutes, and everybody's just like rearranging the chairs around us.
The game had started.
We're standing in the corner. Yeah. And I was like, it was just such like a vulnerable and like sweet moment. But I think that was really when it had all started. And then I think the rest of camp, this was just something that was like on my heart, on my mind, just like the rest of it of like, what could this look like back home? What could this look like truly? And so I think coming back from camp and just getting back into the daily life back home, I think the high of camp and the emotions wore down, but it really set into like, wow, I'm actually serious about this, and I want to consider this in like the long term. And it's like, I talked to Rose, we've talked a lot about it back home and with Audrey, I think, and just talking about it and like really holding it with an open hand of like, if that's where the Lord wants me, he's gonna get me there. Like he's gonna put me in Alaska, he's gonna put me in the villages, or if it's somewhere else, like it's the Lord's plan. It just really opened up the possibility of missions. Just holding it with an open hand of also like, if that's not the Lord's will for me, just, he's going to lead me somewhere else, but wherever I am, like my main goal I want it to be to glorify and to serve the Lord wherever he has me, whether it's here or back in Sacramento or whether it's here in Alaska. And so it's funny, like we've had every like couple of months, the pastor back at home would preach a sermon, and like, it'll be somewhat related to like missions or like along the line of like, sacrificing. And I would like text Rosie in the middle of service and be like, it's a sign, Rosie, the Lord is telling us to go. And so we joke about it every now and then. But I think, it's definitely like just been praying about it, and really just the main thing of like, Lord, like use me where you want me, whether that's here, whether that's in Alaska, whether that's somewhere else.
Timbuktu.
And absolutely, if the Lord wills. And so I think right now, I feel like in my daily life, I'm just kind of like, okay, I just need to be faithful in what the Lord has right in front of me. Like not to, look too far into the future and not just be like, okay, Lord, it's all on you, but just kind of being faithful in where he's called me, and just setting myself up for like, okay, if the Lord calls me to Alaska, what I'm doing right now will set me up for that. But if it's not, then I'll still have served the Lord well in what I am in right now.
You remind me of a famous missionary named David Livingstone. He was a missionary in Africa.
Okay.
And he was kind of an explorer too.
Okay.
But he was famous for saying, I never made a sacrifice. And he said that because what he did was so fulfilling. It was like the reward, he suffered all these hardships and stuff, but none of that mattered. Because what he was doing was so life-giving. And so, and I love that thought for people who want to serve as missionaries. It's like, I'm not even making a sacrifice. I am fulfilling something beautiful in me. And I really like that mindset.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But just constantly praying about it. And
we're also all very young. I'm 21 and they're 19. So
it's like figuring out like which direction am I going to go.
It's a little intimidating sometimes to think about making such a big move at such a young age. But like what Angela was saying, for right now, we know we're in Sacramento, we're in California. we need to be serving there. Like,
Where you are.
oh, a lot of people have told me, like, it's so important to be serving locally before you go and try and serve somewhere else, because who do you think you are to not be able to serve at home in your local church, in your local body where the Lord has placed you, but then to somehow think you can go out into some random place and do great things?
Yeah,
like,
I'll do it when I get there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Every day is a time to be in the mission field, in a sense. Like, at home, we're on the mission field. We're still called to be sharing the gospel, to be pouring into people.
Mhm.
That doesn't change just because we're living in the comfort of our own home. So I think now, as we're in this limbo stage, like at such young ages, it's so important for all of us to still be serving faithfully, to still be on the mission field, to still see our life as the Lord's and as a way that we glorify God by how we live our lives and share the gospel back home. And if in a couple years, when we're maybe a little bit more stable, or we know more what we're going to do with our lives, like, if the Lord leads us somewhere else, we'll go. If the Lord calls us to stay, we'll stay. And we just, we need to be faithful, whether we're 21, whether we're 40, like, we are called to be faithful, you know?
Thanks for saying 21 or 40.
Hey, remember, it's like an older brother, not a dad. You're not a dad to us.
Thank you for trying. So
Young
Audrey, let's close with you. I know you're interested in midwifery, which is delivering babies.
Yes, it
Not
is.
cows.
I know this now, but I didn't know this until I started having children. I'm like, midwifery? Are they like, I'm half a wife? What is this? But is there a connection between your camp experience and this desire for midwifery, and even here in Alaska, which is what you're kind of pursuing?
I would say yes. I would say that something that I learned at camp is just kind of the urgency you feel when it comes to sharing the gospel, because it's like you have 7 days with these kids. And I think when you get home, it's like you just get so set in your routine in your life, and it kind of goes on the back burner in a sense of like, this is my purpose, is to share the love of Christ with others. And I think what I've been learning this past year is like, we focus so much on the decisions of, am I supposed to be a teacher? Am I supposed to be the doctor? Am I supposed to be a midwife? Maybe whatever it is. But in reality, what really matters is whatever you do, you need to do it with a heart to serve the Lord. So it might not look like, oh, I'm going to drop everything and go become a missionary, but in what you do, are you a missionary? You know, kind of like what Rosie was saying about serving in your own hometown. And so I don't know, I think about like becoming a midwife, and it's a very like personalized experience in a way. You know, you're really getting to know these people who you're serving. And I find something really neat about that, and really beautiful, just to like walk with a woman through, you know, her journey of pregnancy, and even in that maybe opportunities that come up. And the Alaska connection, I mean, I think it's just, I really love Alaska. Like, it's the first time I came here, I was like, this is really cool. This is a beautiful place, and a place that I think is broken in a lot of places, but also there are people here who are serving the Lord and, you know, trying to share the gospel with all, everyone around.
I really liked what you said. You said it really well about whatever you do, do it as a missionary, even if it's a midwife, a teacher, an engineer, whatever it is. Because I remember being 19, 20, 21.
Not that long ago.
Not that
It was not that long ago.
Years ago.
Just a few years.
So recent.
And that was funny. And thinking like, I want to know what God wants me to do. In other words, the puzzle is there's some specific thing that he wants me to do, and I have to figure out what that thing is, and I don't have an audible voice. I don't have a sign popping out of the sky. And I remember being so frustrated. But I think what you said was right on. It's I don't know that he does for very few people, like Moses, but we forget that there was like a million Israelites who did not get such a specific calling. And so it's about seeking him in whatever you do. If you like delivering babies, do that to his glory. You know, and I think that's a good way to frame it. Like, he gives us agency, decide, you know, make a choice. Stop trying to find what his hidden agenda is.
Yeah.
His agenda is for you to make decisions, to subdue the earth, to be an image bearer, to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
And I really think that can be really freeing for a lot of young people who are like me, who was like,
Yeah.
there's something specific and I just need a sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think that's an unwise way,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was in that mindset for a long time of what is the Lord's will for my life? You know, like you think of it as what it precisely does he have for me, like you're saying, and expecting an image or something or a sign. And it really, his will for your life is the same in the sense of you're supposed to serve Christ in what you do, whatever it may be. And it's, like you said, super freeing because it, just gives you so much peace.
Can I add in a final verse?
Sure.
So this was also something that was on my mind a lot of camp and many months after. But it's Philippians, also in Philippians. This was something.
It is so good.
Oh yeah, I read this at camp. Yep. So Philippians chapter 1, verses 20 through 21. As it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but that with full courage, now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. And I think all three of us are in that stage of like, you know what, whether the Lord has us in California or Alaska or a different state, a different country, like,
Timbuktu.
Timbuktu.
I don't know. Timbuktu's been coming up.
Yeah.
Today,
Might have been
we have a new thing
Yeah.
to bring about.
But yeah, wherever it is the Lord has us, or back in, Sacramento, like let Christ be honored wherever that may be, and so I think that's something that is, just important to remember.
A beautiful verse that
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there, ladies. This was very enlightening. You demonstrated more wisdom than I did when I was 19 or something, just a few years ago.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on the show and sharing your heart and thoughts. And, we'll have the rest of the week to hang out. You're just visiting for the week.
Yeah.
And then I'll see you this summer.
Of course. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to share.
Thank you for
We just want people to come to camp.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
This is actually a plug. So Alaska
It is.
2025.
It's ConcordHills.org. You can apply on
come to camp.
Please
in the
come
show
to
notes.
camp. Come meet us. Come hang out with us.
there. Come hang out with us.
Come fly with Billy.
Thank you.